Do it slowly, sexily.
Do it. Then she falls down.
You can leave the light on.
Good memory. Very good memory.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening, said the host with a sense of excitement for tonight's podcast.
And unfortunately, our co-host, Ash Slimnastics McKenzie, is out tonight. She had a car accident in beautiful Houston, Texas. So thanks for that, Scott. Each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, Lovecraft Country, Watchmen, and thank God True Detective is over. Find all information at past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing tonight?
Well, Gene, before we get to tonight's movie, I just want to let everybody know this has been a rough week for Shat.
Yeah.
So I had heart surgery 2 days ago. Ash was going to try to do everything she could. She has several broken bones, car on its side. She's doing well. Luckily, kids weren't in the car. But it shows you the dedication that we're here. And we're here for our listeners, and tonight's movie especially. A lot of times I've gotten movies that were commissioned for things that I've had in my life or things I've loved, the military. And tonight's a Gene movie. So we have to do this for him. And I'm glad that I could make it here. Still a little loopy on some meds. So if I'm not the sharpest, cut me some slack. But I'm really excited when Scott H., one of our mega donors, a Shat Mount Rushmore supporter, wrote in and commissioned. Questionably, this is supposed to be a romantic drama, but it is the 1985 bomb, Perfect. And he was kind enough to send in a voicemail, which I love more than even writing in because we get to hear the voice of the commissioner. So Scott H., please tell us why you commissioned this.
Hey, Shat crew, Scott H. from Friendswood, Texas. I want to thank you for accepting this commission of the 1985 movie Perfect, starring John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis. I remember two things from this movie back when I saw it in the theater with my parents. Jamie Lee Curtis and Marilu Henner in a leotard, and Masquerade by Berlin. So I rewatched it a couple days ago, and I still came away with those two things. So I hope you enjoy the movie. Y'all can cuss and discuss, and I look forward to hearing what you think about it. Keep up with y'all on Discord. Y'all have a great day. Take care.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for commissioning this movie. I had my smoked meats earlier today. We are smoker buddies, and I'm having a beer right now in honor of you shotgunning a beer for your beloved Texans. And unfortunately, we don't have Ash here tonight, and I do want to apologize for that. But what you will get, I promise you in this podcast, is two mutually horny men talking about your movie commission.
Yes, and this has got to be up there for like awkward movies to see with your family. I remember I went and somehow talked my parents into going to see Basic Instinct. And then realizing, like during the interrogation, the leg spreading, how awkward this was to be a family movie. I think Perfect has to be up there for a young boy to be watching with his dad.
Unless you're Iranian, because this is a perfect depiction, no pun intended, of Iranian sexuality. This is how we flirt. This is how we find mates. This is how we find love out of infatuation. I connected with this movie in so many ways.
I did pick that up at your wedding, that all of the dances are rituals like this. A lot of thrusting, a lot of gyrating hips, a lot of pointing and pulling. It could have been one of Jesse's classes.
So, Big D, we always ask where you were when you first saw a movie, what your memories are of it. This week, it is the John Travolta box office bomb, Perfect. What do you got?
So this is not a shtick, okay? I honestly remember the poster, and I think it was John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. Maybe it was because of their Grease connection, but I remember Olivia Newton-John. She's in like the high socks. It's very 80s aerobics. She's got the headband on. This is an imaginary movie that I made out of the video that she did. What is it? Let's Get Physical, where she's working out with some fat guys. I completely mixed the two up. I had never seen this before, and this is definitely something that belongs in Shat.
Big D, I wasn't as misguided as you in my memories of this film, but my familiarity with Perfect was limited to internet memes. So those of you who've never seen Perfect, if you don't know what this movie is about, I'm sure you've seen the meme, the aerobic seduction scene, where you see John Travolta in the short shorts and you see Jamie Lee Curtis getting all sweaty and they're just looking at each other from across the room. And we'll get into that. For some reason, though, I thought that meme came from some director's cut of Saturday Night Fever that I didn't remember. I totally did not recognize Jamie Lee Curtis. But now seeing the full movie, thanks to Scott, I've got the full context of that scene, and it is glorious.
And this now explains another one of our favorite movies, True Lies. The dancing scene there where she is trying to seduce her husband. Her training for this movie must have helped.
Do it slowly, sexily.
Do it. Then she falls down.
Let's hit the trailer.
I'm glad I met you. I'm sorry I met you.
I'm glad that you're glad you met me, but I'm sorry that you're sorry you met me.
John Travolta.
I would gladly take one of your aerobic classes if you let me interview you.
I was really beginning to like you, too.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
How many times a year do you fall in love, Adam?
Depends on the subject.
Perfect. He's a reporter for Rolling Stone, working on 2 different stories.
I don't think you understand. I might want you to be the focus of my story.
She's one of them.
I don't think you understand. I don't want to be the focus of anything.
Perfect.
The only problem is she doesn't want to cooperate, but she will. I just need a viewpoint from someone who works here, someone like you.
Are you deaf? No!
I got a plane to catch, another story to write.
The government could put pressure on you, too. They could send you to jail.
Well, that's a risk I'll have to take, isn't it?
I read that shit you wrote about me.
Good reporter would never get in bed with the subject.
You keep forgetting something. I'm not your subject.
Do you think that people that are in better shape have better sex?
That's what I want to be, the most perfect me possible.
Because if you perfect yourself, you'll be loved. Is that what you're saying?
I read your little story. You lied to me.
Has he gone nuts?
What is so wrong with wanting to be perfect?
John Travolta.
You are so hot.
Jamie Lee Curtis.
I like being the best.
In a James Bridges film, Perfect.
Rolling Stone reporter Adam Lawrence, played by John Travolta, is sent from New York to Los Angeles to write an article about a businessman arrested for dealing drugs. During his stay, Adam is assigned another story about how fitness clubs are the singles bars of the 80s. He visits the Sport Connection, where he meets workout instructor Jessie Wilson, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and asks her for an interview. Because of a previous bad experience with the press when she was a competitive swimmer, Jessie declines the interview. So, Big D, as you mentioned, this movie opens up in a newsroom. I am immediately connected from the get-go. I could tell I was going to be biased. So everyone listening, I admit my bias. Nobody is unbiased when they watch a movie. Your life experiences make you attracted to or repulsed by a film. And I got to say, the newsroom scenes in this movie are really well done. They show the collaboration and the friction between editors and reporters and photographers. And as a decade-long newsroom veteran, I can tell you that a lot of this stuff really rang true. When we see Adam working the obits, which is the shit job in the newsroom that I secretly love doing, that's real. It's like when cops get assigned to like the main strip in a college town and they have to spend their weekend doing that. You got the shit job because you did a shit job. And in an era right now in 2024, when traditional print media is going extinct, it felt so good to me. I mean, we talk about nostalgia. It felt so good to be back in the glory days of magazines when Rolling Stone reigned supreme.
See, and I think being a journalist is one of those jobs that most people don't have an idea of what you do. Obviously, you write, but they don't know everything that I know from what a journalist or what a newsroom would look like is from like Spotlight or Fletch. That's the only time I've ever seen the inner workings of someone who works in a paper or a magazine. And my observation, you say this rings true. It seems like every journalist is miserable. They all hate their lives. They hate their chosen professions. They hate photographers. They hate the editors. They hate each other. The newsroom seems like a place where it is literal combat, where everybody can see how they can judge the other suffering. The worse the journalist's life is, it's like a badge of honor. Even if they write a good piece, nobody ever seems happy.
And Big D, you've talked before about the military, how it's like you have to get out. But at the same time, there were experiences that you had and relationships that you had and a way of life that in some ways you miss, or that at least changed you, that you have a soft spot for. And I don't want to draw out all the people who get pissed about my ROTC stories. And I'm not trying to compare being a journalist to being a soldier, but I think that there is, but I will, which is that I think that there is a toughness to that life and it fucks everybody up. But when you're out of it, you miss it at times. And if I could earn my current salary working in a newsroom, I would change jobs in a heartbeat. That nothing would make me happier. That's in some bizarre twist, print media makes this roaring comeback. I mean, I still subscribe to the newspaper being delivered on my front porch. And if those jobs came back and newspapers rose to prominence and I could go and work in that big newsroom again, I would. There's just nothing better than the culture within a newsroom. First, as you alluded to, people are painfully intelligent. There are some very, very smart, incredibly underpaid people working in the newsroom. They're also gifted in language and relentlessly driven. I mean, these people do not take no for an answer. They work and work and work like crazy. It just makes for a fantastic workplace. You're surrounded by smart people who know how to communicate. And yeah, there's a shitty part to it, like a deployment, right? You work your weekends and nights and your holidays. That's just expected. That's what you do. And no, it's not a healthy lifestyle, but what's really cool about it, and you know, I know you work in sort of a bureaucratic environment. I work at a large corporation, and decisions happen way outside of your office, right? They're happening somewhere at some level that you don't quite understand, and you're just executing on that. But in a newsroom, these huge decisions are happening very, very fast. You have to be decisive immediately, right? And they happen in-house. It's just the people in the room who are making the decisions. And then that goes to print and it is permanent and it's going out to thousands of homes, or in the case of Rolling Stone magazine, perhaps millions. How do you not love that? That's like a drug.
Oh, I can see that because it's the excitement of the deadline.
Yeah.
Is that there is no rethinking it. You have all these different levels of approval and you're fighting time. So I can imagine the euphoric feeling of, you know, because you see him in the movies, like, oh, we're going to make the cover. Oh, here's a shot. Are we going to set this? I can see how that would be intoxicating. But the movie suffers from an identity crisis. You hint that it opens up he's doing obituaries in '85 in New Jersey. And it sounds like Home Alone. It opens up, you got Jingle Bells playing. And it looked to me, shockingly, that 1985 looked like 1955. The cars, the dirt on the ground, New York and New Jersey looked older. And we get into an area here. I joked earlier that it's supposed to be a romantic comedy. This movie has an identity crisis. It doesn't know what it wants to be. You got the marketing and the promotion that's focusing on all the thrusting of the hips and the gyration and ass and tit. And John Travolta's inappropriate, his penis just shaking around in his tiny ass little shorts. So that's where we got the hot bodies, the sexuality in the posters. But then they want us to believe it's this romantic drama below it. And it doesn't know what it wants to be. Normally, when you get a movie that's a romantic comedy, the jobs are the background. This movie spends an awful amount of time in the press room. we didn't need to see any kind of the tension of the investigation. They even give little nuggets throughout it. Oh, he's being followed by the FBI. There's people around. There's this tension about the stripper and him getting beaten up and the boyfriend. But none of that goes anywhere. There is no investigative journalism. They waste too much time on his job when it doesn't pay off in the end. And I think it hurts the entire romantic subtext, which is the main through line of the plot.
I mean, you might have just described why this movie bombed, because this movie, again, to remind everyone, they spent like $20 million to make it. I think it pulled in about 12, right? So didn't really do well. And it might have bombed because the audience is mostly people like you, non-journalists, right? From my viewpoint as a journalist, this is a terrific film, because they made this movie about someone like me. The romance between Jesse and Adam explores a lot of real issues within real romance, right? Trust, infatuation turning into love, complicated histories, professional obligations, cultural differences. I found that part very amusing and very entertaining. But at the same time, I thought the journalism was an appropriate backdrop, and maybe a little bit more than that, as you alluded to. With regard to the Mackenzie storyline, we have to remember that Adam works for Rolling Stone, so he's not necessarily an investigative journalist. His job is to do a profile. He's profiling the subject, so he tried to get the access. The fact that Mackenzie then turns around and goes, "Oh yeah, I was framed for the drug deals because the government was trying to get to me," that was kind of a surprise to him and took his work in a direction he wasn't expecting. He wasn't trying to investigate the dealings. He just wanted to do a profile on this really interesting guy.
But my thing is, why do the two cases? Not only are we seeing the newsroom, but he's going out to do the story of LA, but they throw in the Mackenzie. It's Mackenzie. The only reason that storyline is there is that so at the very end, after she thinks he's an asshole, he can stand on the one leg saying, "No, I have my principles. I will not reveal the tapes for the case." He does it just to win the girl back. That's the only reason that whole plot is in there.
I don't know about that, because let's consider like TV procedurals, right? Like police procedurals. You're like, why are they doing the police work when we really want to know about their relationships with each other, right? It's an integral part of it because it drives the story. If it wasn't for the Mackenzie thing, let's think about, because that's what I originally thought this movie was about. Let's think about it without the Mackenzie case. Guy from New York, Rolling Stone magazine, goes to LA to do a story about gyms. Who cares?
Anyone who wants to see a romantic comedy. Are you kidding me? That's a blockbuster. Who wants to watch a movie about a Hollywood boulevard, like a prostitute who gets picked up by a John and spends the week spending money? Ooh, bingo. We got ourselves a hit. The Mackenzie is the sole reason this movie failed.
Yeah, but we're not talking about Steve Martin, and we're not talking about Richard Gere here. We're talking about John Travolta. He needs something a little spicy. Well, Adam joins the fitness club and soon coaxes other club members to tell him about the gym and its impact on their love lives. Some, such as fun-loving Linda and Sally, are all too candid about their experiences with the opposite sex. A romance develops between Jesse and Adam, resulting in a moral dilemma. As a journalist, he has lost his objective point of view. So as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I didn't know the movie Perfect existed. I sure as hell knew about the aerobic scene where John Travolta and Jamie Lee Curtis are basically fucking through their short shorts and leotard. It's hilarious. If you've never watched it, you can Google it. It goes on forever. But they really seem to be having a good time doing it. Like, you're watching John Travolta. He seems like he's having the time of his life. He's cracking up. And I always thought this scene, and I think a lot of people out there do who've never seen this movie, they think it's a scene where Travolta is hitting on the fitness instructor. But what you have to understand after you've seen this movie is that they've already fucked. This is after they had sex, and now he's in her class. And when you watch it through that context, the scene makes so much more sense. And it's kind of got a wholesomeness to it.
I think it hints to, the movie's over 2 hours long. Or right at about 2 hours long, that they filmed way more footage than they need to. And you're underselling this scene big time. You're, they say, you're burying the lead. Okay. At 40 minutes, that's the point in the film where this comes on. I timed it 4.5 minutes of aerobic sessions in this room with about 100 people, and there's no dialogue. Jesse and Adam are talking to each other in the scene. They're going back and forth, but we don't hear any of it. All we hear is the music over the top. It's It's Shock Me by Jermaine Jackson. It is nonstop. We don't hear what they're saying. They play the entire song from beginning to end. They're doing like it's a group of good looking people. They're doing like it's like the fire hydrant. It looks like a dog lifting its leg up to pee. They're on their backs thrusting. Everything is a rotation of the hip. It is a giant mass of attractive LA 80s folks dry humping, thrusting, grabbing. Travolta has these tiny, tiny, tiny shorts. And then when you think, Gene, it couldn't go anymore. We got to stretch this out. We get another 4-minute plus montage set to Masquerade, which Scott mentioned by Berlin when they're trying to do a photo shoot. I got the feeling that they had way too much footage and didn't know what to do with it.
Were you entertained by it?
Yeah, for about 2.5 minutes.
You weren't entertained for the whole 4 minutes?
I was more entertained by the fact that how long is this going to go on? I found myself just counting the minutes. As a guy, yes, I found myself thinking stuff like, how is her leotard staying in one place? So I wrote to Ash. I said, Ash, please tell me that there is some substance that women put on leotards. And she said, yes, it's called butt glue. It's an adhesive that you can spray on the leotard because there's no way the moves she's doing that this leotard would stay in one place. And she was doing some moves where I could see some separation. So other than that, I really wasn't that entertained.
I think with Jamie Lee Curtis, though, like she's not a normal person. She's got nice, like angular shoulders and then a very small ass. Like I could see where it would just stay in place naturally. She's a triangle of a person.
Yeah, it's not that I'm anyone to judge, but yeah, very weird body.
Oh, you think it's weird?
I think yes, because it goes straight. There's no butt. There's no lift. It goes straight down. Because at both these points in their lives, they're I think like 27 and 31, yeah. Very fit, very thin, but she looks very I don't know.
Androgynous? Hermaphroditic, perhaps?
No, just very flat, very flat. That leotard was not very attractive.
I liked it.
But watching the way she moves, she's like an animal the way she's moving around on stage. She's an Olympic caliber athlete. Her cardiovascular health is on point. The big point they make of this like long session is that Adam is getting like smoked. He thinks it's funny in the beginning. He's laughing and he can't keep up with it. She's on it. She's flexible. She's the gymnast. She's moving around. And I just thought myself, as the scene goes on to where you'd mentioned that they are having sex and she's talking about their sex and foreplay like it's her aerobics class, that you're going to warm up for about 5-10 minutes. We're going to stretch the important muscles. We're going to heat them up. And then we're going to have 25 to 30 minutes of hard work. I'm like, holy shit. After watching her on stage for this 4 minutes, I'm sorry. I'm under no illusion that I am a man who's up for that task. And I'm not talking about at 50, even at 20. There is no way that I would be able to handle this. And I give Adam credit for it. Would you have been able to walk into that situation with knowing what she's capable of, the way she looks, and think you're going to go for 25 to 30 minutes?
No, not 25, 30 minutes. By the way, guys, if you're listening out there and you think that like you fuck for 25 or 30 minutes, I guarantee you don't. Like time it next time. It's not 25 to 30 minutes. And we're not talking about like the whole situation. We're talking about just P and V or P and B or whatever you put your P in, right?
P and M.
P and M.
V and M.
Yeah. V and M.
Yeah, vagina and mouth. I'm all about
equal. No, I'm not talking about oral.
Oh, you just talking about, okay.
I'm just talking about
copulation.
insertion.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So anyway, doing it. Humping, as it were. If you think you're going for 25, 30 minutes, I can almost guarantee you're not. And if you are, you're like into some tantric shit like Sting, and that's totally cool. No judgment. But as far as being intimidated by the cardiovascular health, I can tell you as the husband of a Krav instructor and former college athlete, I'm not the former college athlete. She is. Sarah played volleyball. Sex is not a competition. And oral, as you suggested, goes a long way. That's the game. That's the game I play. I don't care how fit you are, doing the oral. And then after that, I've written my check to Partyville.
See, but I disagree. She wants to be perfect. Everything she does is perfect.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
I believe that sexually, she is perfect. And I believe she expects that of her mates.
See, I feel like Jessie is a little more forgiving than you give her credit for. And we see that a little bit further in the movie. And by the way, I want to set a big thank you to Jessie. I understand she's a fictional character, but thank you, Jessie, because Jessie unlike other women we've seen in film, perhaps most female characters we've seen in film, and that is not talking about women in real life. I'm talking about the way women characters are written, right? Is that they get pissed at the guy when he has to work. We see the cop movie, he was working the case and he comes home and his wife's upset. You see the movie where a guy's off to war and the wife, she got lonely, or a guy, is just trying to do his job to provide for his family. And the wife's like, you weren't home for Christmas dinner or whatever. That's not what happens here. Personally, I find it super sexy when Sarah is disciplined about her career. Hey, I've got a patient I've got to see. I've got to stay a little bit late. Cool. You give a shit about your job. So I've always hated in movies where the cop's wife or the superhero's child gets butthurt that some things at the moment are more important, like, I don't know, saving the world. And when Jesse sees that Adam has to travel for the Mackenzie interview, they're about to fuck. And he's like, oh, I gotta go. She's like, yeah, dude, I'll pop this pussy in a Tupperware for you. You can heat it up later. That is a great woman.
Yeah, I think it's an extended form of foreplay. They're both excited. And they do this really cute, 1980s computing thing. They're like, oh, is that a word processor? And she's like, I know how to computer. And she starts typing and they go back and forth. And that's actually how she initiates sex. She writes he writes a sentence and she says, how do I delete it? Yeah, the backspace bar, you back it up. And then she writes, you want to fuck. So yeah, this is kind of cool. And he leaves. And I think that makes him more attractive. You delay it and he knows. It's almost like that whole negging thing where most guys would drool and drop anything for Jesse. But Adam has something else in his life going on.
Are you turned on, repulsed by, or indifferent to when a woman refers to it as fucking? I know in this case, we're both married men. So let's say Vanessa in this sense, if she said, hey, Big D, I want to fuck.
Would that
be out of character for her?
Who, for Vanessa?
Yeah.
Yes. But occasionally it's been said at times, but I don't know. I felt like it's a bit vulgar. Not that I'm, what is it? Puritan. Not that I'm pure, but it's almost like I'm like, oh my, that's, or she could have written something like, hey, I want you.
No, what the fuck? Something.
Yeah. The F word seems so
perfect.
Seems so procedural. I don't know.
It's perfect. Less cynical than before. Adam earns Jesse's trust and makes a determined effort to show Jesse that not all journalists are out for the cheap sensation. He writes an in-depth, fair-minded analysis of fitness clubs as a singles meeting scene. But his piece is deemed unacceptable by his boss, Rolling Stone's editor-in-chief, Mark Roth.
So I hinted at it before. This is a very sexy cast. Travolta was 30. Jamie Lee Curtis was 27. They have an undeniable chemistry on screen. And I think that goes even beyond the main cast to the hundreds of extras. They're all super fit. They're hot. They're young. And they are fun to watch. Maybe not 4.5 minutes fun, but they're fun to watch. You got the one main guy who looks like a lion with his mane and all the different characters throughout the gym you meet. And they're all one big, giant, pumping, thrusting mass of humanity. And the outfits and the gym hookups, it's something else. And it got me thinking about when we asked about how these movies hold up. And we're now in an age of cell phones and the question of swell fees and people videotaping their sets to where some gyms are starting to ban tripods and filming. And I almost miss the days of the 80s when people went to work out to work out. They weren't going there to show people that they're working out. And the guys wearing those tiny ass shorts and the outfits. Today, I don't think you could do any of this. I think the gym's a very different place.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. On the flip side, though, Big D, I think workouts make a lot more sense now because I'm watching this movie and I'm like, what are they doing? What is that guy doing? What's she doing? And remember, it's hard to think back to this time, and I apologize if I offend anybody who's listening who doesn't know these facts, but things like in the 80s, they'd be like, how to burn belly fat. Like you could burn just your belly fat without burning other fat in your body, Or like how to grow your boobs by doing this exercise, which, yes, you could grow the pectoral muscles underneath the breast, but it's not what you think is going to happen. It's not like you're going to do pec exercises as a woman. It's just going to make your tits bigger. They're going to look different. It'll look like you have a boob on top of a large pec, right? But these were like misconceptions they had back then, or the fact that if you want to burn fat, you do cardio. If you want to get big, you do resistance training, right? And it's been found that none of that stuff is true. So I'm kind of grateful that although we do have this influencer culture now and people being ridiculous in the gym, and the one thing that gets to me is when people wear like matchy outfits to the gym. I just do not understand that. Not matching with each other, but like their shirt, their pants, their shoes, and like their hat are coordinated. It's the gym. You should be wearing your nastiest shit possible. Clean, but nasty. But as we get into a time now when we know more about muscle gain and fat loss, and it's not just anecdotal, there's a science behind it. I really love that. I love that there's so much good information out there, even if you have to wade through those oceans of influencers and supplement peddlers to get at it.
See, but I also think there may be something to the subtext of the East Coast, West Coast, because the movie does show New York in a certain way. New York is rainy, it's gloomy, it's very serious, it's business, it's Wall Street, it's the McKenzie case. Then the West Coast, it felt like almost this was an infomercial for West Coast living. Everybody is less serious. Everybody's bubbly and friendly. They're talking about sprouts and about living their best life. And hey, let's go up to the mountain. Let's go skiing. And Travolta's like, "What? You have mountains in California? Oh yeah, from the surf to the ski lift. Like it's a big thing." And I think they make the California ditzy crowd. I think it's also something the movie's saying about the East Coast and the West Coast.
Again, I think I approached that from the newsroom perspective where I said, wow, I really want to hang out with those people at Rolling Stone. I don't really want to hang out with the Californians at all. I mean, listen, people in New York, there's a reason why they don't have to go to the gym if they don't want to. You can just walk everywhere. You're going up the stairs, you're going down the stairs. You're going up the stairs, you're walking 20 blocks. You know, you're carrying your groceries and stuff. It'll keep you fit. You don't need to go to the gym. The city is your gym. Adam's article is turned over to others for editing using materials supplied by his photographer, Frankie. She finds an old magazine article about Jesse's affair with her swim coach. Meanwhile, Adam travels to Morocco for another assignment, unaware of the changes being made to his story. The article's release devastates Jesse and others like Sally and Linda, described as the most used piece of equipment in the gym. So Adam's story about sports connection or sports erection, it goes through multiple drafts. And his first draft of it is exactly the sort of salacious tale that we were expecting, right? That he's talking about these people and their crazy lives, you know, to really get a charge out of the magazine readers. It feels sleazy. It feels cruel, like what we associate with journalism. And what the movie illustrates is that he earned the trust of some pretty nice people. Like these are all really nice people. Yes. And then he painted them in a horrible light. And I thought, honestly, his story was lazy journalism. It lacked substance. I would not write it that way. But the movie did a really smart thing because what they do is then you're like, oh God, journalism, it's the worst. And then the movie offers us an alternative. The story that Adam actually turns in because he loves Jesse so much, right? And this story, they kind of read out an excerpt from it. It's boring. It's ponderous. It lacks flavor. I wouldn't read it. I'd stop reading it at the first paragraph. I'm like, this is way too cerebral. And I think the movie is kind of quietly making a case for why journalists sometimes have to sting a little and have to go a little dirty because otherwise it's not really worth reading.
See, but Adam's a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
You said that he's befriending some simple California folks. You know, these aren't like the New York elites that he's used to dealing with. And he gets in good with them and he lies. The notes he's taking after the lunch, the little crib notes like, okay, dad dead at 40. All the quotes that the Emerson quote that he told her. He's taking all these notes to manipulate people. There is a social game he's playing that's slimy. But then also you see the whole world of the newsrooms like that. It gets even worse. So if you were in a newsroom, what is a bigger faux pas? Is that if someone deletes your article or someone takes an article you've written and then rewrites it without your permission.
Yeah, it's the rewrite for sure. So just so people understand how a newsroom works, typically speaking, and they kind of get into this in the movie, if it's print medium, right, you've got a limited amount of space, right, inches that you can write essentially. And if you write longer than that, we might have to trim it, especially if the photography is really good and we dedicate more space to images. You got to cut back on the words a little bit. So as an editor, it was my job to make sure a story fit. So the reporter is always going to write long. They write an inverted pyramid, right? So the most important shit comes first, the details come last. So if I have to trim, I normally can just trim from the bottom. That's going to be pretty safe, but sometimes you have to do a little bit more surgery than that. Trimming an article, you can get away with. Spiking an article, which is saying this isn't going to run in this edition. And they call it spiking because you used to actually have a spike on your desk and you would put it on the spike. This one's dead. Spiking an article is even considered generally okay. Like a reporter might be like, why does my article spiked? And you explain to them and you work through it. Substantially rewriting someone's work, that is going to lead to a heated debate. And possibly you have to remove the byline. So generally what would happen is if we're going to do that much of a facelift on a piece, Adam's name comes off of it. And we would just say either from the editor's or somebody else at the paper would, or the magazine would put their byline on it and present it as their own work. So this is like a gross violation. Like a reporter in real life would get this pissed about it and possibly go to Morocco.
But would he be that trusting to just submit it and think it's going to get through? Does he get to see the revisions? Because he makes a comment, somebody's been editing with their elbows.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that means somebody's been like taking a hatchet to their piece.
Correct.
But he just submits it and runs. He doesn't seem to check it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting part of the story, too, because like he went to Morocco. He doesn't really have to. Even if he stayed in L.A., he wouldn't have seen what was going on in the newsroom in New York. But, you know, they really wanted to do their Morocco scene and show a little bit of Travolta French, so they went with it. Well, Adam tries to explain the whole situation to Jesse, but she won't listen. Meanwhile, he must attend a trial at which he's supposed to testify. Refusing to break a promise and hand over tapes from the Mackenzie interview, Adam is jailed for contempt of court. Jesse can see that Adam is a man of his word and picks him up from jail after Mackenzie is found not guilty. So Big D, you talked about the 4.5 minutes of gyration and aerobics that go on in this movie and how that could be cut, maybe get it away from the 2 hours. I've got a different theory on how this movie could be made shorter, and that is cut the travel scenes. This movie is like 30% travel, and I'm not just talking like interesting anecdotal travel. They will follow a car down the road for a while. There's a scene where Jesse is following the car that's escorting Adam to jail, and you think something's going to happen, like it's a chase scene or something like that. This is not the French Connection. Like this is not Bullet. This is literally two cars driving down the road until they get to the jail, and then that's it. Adam is on a plane, I think 4, 5, 6 times in this movie. I don't even know what his travel budget is. This really must be the glory to his Rolling Stone magazine because he is constantly flying New York, LA, New York, LA, Morocco, back to New York, back to LA. And that's really where most of the movie takes place, is in transit.
You talk about that. It's like the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones. When you're going the King's Highway and you're going from King's Landing up to the north, it is a huge waste of time. But I want to talk here about something that just came in my head. The whole revelation that the article about Jessie when she was younger was true.
Yeah.
So we're led to believe that she had sex, she was underage with her coach, but yet the article was written that she was the bad one in the relationship. Nothing was talked about. They say that Jessie destroyed the marriage. Nobody, even in 85, you don't think this would have been brought up as, hey, that's a coach taking advantage sexually of an underage athlete?
I mean, I think it's interesting, much like Gattaca, that you had, again, an Olympian that no one seems to remember. Like, I mean, you and I don't pay really close attention to Olympic swimmers, but I guarantee if there's a situation where an Olympic swimmer who was underage had sex with her coach and then it split up a marriage, I'd probably know about it. I might recognize that person, especially if I was a journalist for Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah, but everybody's like, she looks kind of familiar. If somebody sexually assaulted like Mary Lou Retton, I think we would all know that story. Yeah.
Well, now is the time in the podcast where we give our Shat score for perfect. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get up for respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is making ice cream with liquid nitrogen. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It's scaring up a gangbang. I'll go first. Big D, when I started my watch, I noticed that Perfect was going to be 2 hours long. And I thought, how do you make a 2-hour-long movie about a reporter hitting on a fitness instructor? And the answer is you do really long scenes of people driving and working out. But also, You write some really smart dialogue. You throw in some Emerson. You throw in some ideas about how pop culture is the dreams of a society. And you develop some real chemistry with an interesting subplot. I like this movie. It does all those things. And I got to say that I was deeply entertained by it. Is it perfect? No. Is it worth watching? Absolutely. I give it 1.5 wipes.
I agree with a lot of what you said. First of all, I'm going to go 2.5 wipes. I think it's an average film, but it is a must watch because it is a time capsule of 1985 America, of 1985 LA. I think, but it is way too long. I would have rather them focused on the romance and the working out because that's the part that works. That's the fun. That's what you see in the trailer. When you listen to the trailer here, it's not about him out there trying to get his profile of Mackenzie. It's about them in class, them having a good time. And the way I would make this movie quicker is I would cut out the entire Mackenzie trial, unimportant. The beginning, why do we waste almost 10 minutes of him in New Jersey in 1985 working for the paper? It opens up. He's at Rolling Stones. He's going to do this story out in LA. He goes out there, meets her, maybe goes back and forth for some other like important drama within the newsroom. But I don't think there was anything special. So I got to go 2.5.
All right. Well, 2.5 wipes from Big D and 1.5 wipes from me, Scott. That gives us an average wipe score of 2 wipes for Perfect. And honestly, I think it did pretty well for itself. I don't know that the rest of the world at first blush would understand what a gem this movie is.
Well, Gene, with that score, normally you hear 2 wipes, and I'm like, I don't know. But because we're getting on like 380 movies, it's starting to fit into a place that I think works well. So with a 2 wipe score, that now ties this in the 136 spot. With kids, If Looks Could Kill, Johnny Dangerously, Tommy Boy, Pet Sematary, The Blues Brothers, Beverly Hills Cop, and Tombstone.
Yeah, I think the only pushback we get there on all those last 3, people would say Tombstone, Beverly Hills Cop, and Blues Brothers are, classics and legendary, but Perfect is a classic in its own way. It's, again, I think it's how different it is from anything that we've seen. Makes it kind of special.
Agreed.
Well, Scott, I hope we did the film justice. We have lots of feedback from other listeners that we should get to this week. And our first voicemail comes from Matt from the UK, who called in about Pump Up the Volume.
Hey, Shat The Movies. It's Matt here from the UK, sponsor of the Christine episode. Ash, it's great to have you back, but I've got to say, you goddamn sons of bitches. 4 wipes for Pump Up the Volume. That is a crime. I'm obsessed with the UK, especially the high school experience. In the UK, we had to wear uniforms pretty much until we finished school. So the fact that you guys didn't have to was something that I always sort of thought was incredible growing up. This film, as a grunge kid, really, really spoke to me. Afterwards, I went out to Tandy's, which is what Radio Shack was called in the UK, and tried to buy bits and bobs to make my own pirate radio. I obviously failed miserably. Nora, she's that kind of cute that like would be your first kiss, but not necessarily a sort of a knockout. But yeah, 4 wipes, it's a goddamn crime. Anyway, love the podcast. Listen to every episode. My favourite has got to be Predator 2 because you just shat the hell all over that. But Pump Up the Volume, guys. You did us dirty. You did us dirty. Love you guys. Bye.
Well, what I don't understand is why didn't he mention The Boat That Rocked? That's a British radio, like the pirate radio film. I remember that from, I think it was the early 90s. It was Philip Seymour Hoffman, Bill Nye, and they're running some pirate radio station off of a boat.
Which is the way you really want to do it. Like
Yeah,
that's how
you can move
that's
it.
how you don't get in you don't put it on a Jeep. You put it on a boat. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that one. Matt, first of all, great pick with Predator 2. That to me still is one of the greatest episodes of Shat the Movies. It really captures a very interesting moment in time for us as a podcast, and a time when the original 3 were together having the time of our lives. That was just a really, really wonderful.
Okay, I got to
episode.
test your memory. What was it that the voodoo guy says?
You can't see the
eyes of the demon, right?
You can't see the eyes of the demon till he come calling.
Yes, it's
calling.
exactly.
Yeah. Never
Yeah,
forget.
Danny Glover running around like he had a loaded diaper, him hiding behind the car door as people are pumping rounds through the car.
Yeah, but Matt, Ash appropriately isn't on this podcast to suffer your wrath because she had nothing to do with that poor score. That was all the gentleman of the pod, and I apologize from the bottom of my heart. I'll do better. I'll do better. Next up, we have a voicemail from Safety Dave calling in about COVID.
Hey, Shat the Movies, Safety Dave here. You may know me as Big Dave, or the guy that was mad at Gene for talking about ROTC, but later took it back. Hey guys, recently listened to a podcast from you, having a brain fart at the moment, but it was the one where Big D was sick. And it just made me realize how much you guys are dedicated to this podcast. So I just was like, I'm going to send normally, and Big D's kind of right. I kind of have like a shtick, a script. I got some kind of angle going in. I've kind of like semi-rehearsed in my mind, at least, what I'm going to say. I don't have like a Hollywood script printed out with cue cards, but I definitely had an idea. And it was, thank you, Big D. Very nice of you to say that. And Gene, very nice of you to talk about safety. I always appreciate a good safety talk. So you guys are cool for indulging me in that. But Big D sounded sick, man, this latest. And again, I think it was sneakers. Yeah, it was sneakers. Now it's coming to my mind. It was sneakers. Big D sounded so sick. And I recently had COVID back in late July. And it just sounded like this, the COVID strain that's going around right now. It's not going to kill you, but it's going to smack you in the nuts. Like the nut punch that I think Gene was talking about, one of his friends, nut punch. It's a nut punch COVID strain.
King B.
But yeah, you guys, man, you're on a streak. Like when a sports team gets on a winning streak, you guys just keep delivering every week. I was originally going to call in about this weird error on the site. Forgive me, but I recall going on maybe a month or two ago, and there were some movies that were on the same date. It was December 12th. There was 2 different movies, and I was like, oh man, are they going to be releasing 2 a week, or is this a problem? And I went on before I did this voicemail because I was like, I don't want to embarrass myself, and be like, oh, I didn't, I went to check and I think it's been fixed. So I don't know. There was something weird going on with the site. I was excited. I thought we were going to get two reviews a week, but that's actually insane. That would be insanity. You guys would have to be committed to a mental institution if that happened. And then the Shat community would probably have to stop you if you're just like, we're doing 2 movies, we're doing 2 reviews a week. It would just be impossible. But yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Just wanted to do a bonus voicemail to be like, hey, you guys are cool. Fighting through colds to do reviews for us. A lot of us depend on you for our mental health. No pressure. So, hey, man, I hope this voicemail finds you guys well. Have a good one. And every voicemail I've left has been on a holiday. And today is National Digital Parenting Day. National Digital Parenting Day. So have a good one.
I can't believe that my employer made me work on National Digital Parenting Day. What a crock.
Do you even know when that is? Maybe you didn't
no.
work that day.
I'm pretty sure I did. It was October 26th.
This is October 26th?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yes, there was an issue with the dates, and a lot of times when the scheduling, they'll kind of get shuffled. So you'll push a couple forward and then they'll back up. I did catch that there is a couple here that are on the same day. I'll have to spread them all out. So thank you for calling it to our attention. And I have to give credit to keeping this train rolling to Gene Lyons, who has been fantastic. And throughout the lifespan of the podcast, there's been different phases where everybody's kind of kept us going. And Gene deserves all the credit right now. He's the one who keeps us on task with schedules and setting out what items we have to do, when we're going to do them, getting the recordings done ahead of time. So without him and without Ash's added energy coming back in, I don't know where we would be. So I want to give Gene all the credit for that.
I appreciate that. And Chris, thank you so much for recognizing the dedication here. I think, as you said, we're kind of hitting stride right now and on a streak. And I think a big part of that is Big D taking care of all the commissions, taking care of the web work. I'm doing the scheduling and kind of setting up the outlines, the notes, and keeping things organized. Ash, again, as he said, bringing in the energy and now contributing on the editing as well, and giving us a lot of the kind of deeper knowledge of things. I think that it's working out really well as a team, and we appreciate you noting that. And it's appropriate that your voicemail got on this episode where we have one person out because of a car accident, one person who literally just had heart surgery. And if you really want a great episode, just wait, because Big D and I are both doing the Chop Top Challenge this year. So there will be a recording very soon in March where the two of us have probably a low-level concussion at the same time.
Yeah, and also I'm surprised my voice was worse yesterday because I was intubated. So, so when they shoved like the hose down your throat, so they've given me all this medication, so I'm feeling little like tinges of it. But yesterday would have been a rough recording.
Did you have any like fire in the sky moments where they hit you with the jelly?
No, but I have these giant like incisions in my groin because it's one of those like they go up through the veins in your legs to do it. So yeah, I'm in a little bit of pain today, but we had to get this recording out.
Well, thanks, Dave, so much for your voicemail. Next up, we have a voicemail from Chris from Germany, a repeat caller who's calling in about being kind of drunk.
Hey, Shat Crew. This is Chris from Germany. I'm just into my third double, what's it called? Teacher's whiskey from like Scotch, Teacher's Scotch, whatever. I'm kind of drunk. It's
German
Friday
joke.
night. I'm rewatching for the 500th time Skyfall on like James Bond tour de force. Anyway, I got this. I have a thought. Bear with me for a second here. So you just recently did this movie from 1979, which is like 2 years outside of your like decade bracket or whatever, like the 80s and 90s movies. You did the movie from 79. I think it was Long Good Friday from 79. And I was thinking The Lord of the Rings, the first one, the Fellowship of the Rings, what's it called? The Companionship of the Ring, the first one, whatever. That's from 2001, isn't it? And that's just 2 years outside your, chosen bracket. So if you do movies from 1979, then I think that, the Companionship, the Fellowship of the Ring, that should be fair game, shouldn't it? Wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be really awesome? I mean, would you agree that is commissionable? Could we do that? The Fellowship of the Ring? Question mark. Let me know what you think.
Well, Long Good Friday was 1980.
Yeah, you're right. It was released in 1980, but I think it was released maybe in the UK in 79. Listen, Chris, I'm always the guy to say absolutely no way. I don't like to go outside of the 80s and 90s. However, Fellowship, actually not my favorite Lord of the Rings movie, but it is a very, very good one. And you're right, it's the closest to the eras that we cover. I could see doing it as a special episode because it's a very special movie. I also just selfishly know that Ash and I and Big D will not see eye to eye on that film. Not saying that Big D doesn't appreciate the film, but I think that one, is going to see a lot of homoeroticism in it, and two, maybe some of the themes that are covered won't exactly sit well with him.
I think I would definitely do it. And we have to, Gene, because our audience is slowly dying. I saw something posted today. They said the time gap between when Dazed and Confused was released. It was released, I think, in 93, and it was about whatever.
Yeah.
That same distance would be a movie today made about 2005.
Right. Yeah.
So I think we have to start moving up here. Otherwise, because our audience is diminishing. I'm having heart surgery. Am I Gen X? Is that what I'm considered?
You're Gen X, yes.
I'm Gen X. There's less of us each day. So I think we got to get these younger people involved if Shat is going to survive.
You say that like young people can't watch movies from the 80s and 90s. Big D, I've got news for you. The internet froze everything. Nothing moves anymore. Everything is the now. That's the crazy part. Like my nephew and my niece, they know just as many songs from the 80s as they do from the 2000s, as they do from the 2020s. It's all the same.
Have you seen the list of remakes that have just come out?
No.
They're doing The Crow. The Roadhouse remake.
That I support.
There was a list
Roadhouse
of like 10 films that I would bet you a lot of the young kids today, they don't even know that it's a remake.
Oh, well, shit. Things happened in the 90s that we watched that we didn't know were remakes. I didn't know Mission Impossible was a remake. I didn't know that Spider-Man's.
The long story short, yes, we would do Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings. You have to. That's a big one. I think that's worth a special episode.
All right, Chris. And I like to imagine that you had the phone with you in bed when you made that call.
He definitely did.
Hell yeah.
He was definitely under the covers. He probably went right to sleep, rolled over, and we bled into his subconscious.
Oh ja, das ist gut.
Das ist gut.
Jawohl.
Wunderbar.
All right. Next up, we have an email that comes from Charlie, who's looking for some help and advice. And Charlie writes, "Hi, all. I'm Charlie, and I've been an avid listener of your podcast for many years. You really helped me during lockdown, and I love your format, banter, going off the topic, and spot-on reviews. I was wondering if I could pick your brains. In October 2019, I set up my own podcast called Rusted Junk, the 80s Movies Podcast. The idea first came in 2018 when I bought the domain forgotten80smovies.com and wrote my first ever movie review of Jaws 3D. I then spoke to my partner and she suggested I make a podcast and she come on it as she knew very little about the movies I'd planned to cover, and thus our podcast was born. Our first season was us getting used to it and learning as we went, but we had loads of fun. We weren't doing it for views or downloads, just keeping sane, especially during lockdown. In season 4, we invited friends on who also covered when my partner was away, and we also started releasing our podcast on YouTube. The reason I'm writing you is because I respect and love what you do, so I'm looking for some advice as to how to grow my podcast. We have around 50 subscribed and around 75 listeners every time. Our YouTube wasn't faring much better, but we just broke 500 views with 1994's Speed, as the latest season is a dip into the 90s. So that's really good for us. I'll stop rambling and get to the point. What advice would you give to a podcaster in my position that would help grow the channel? I'll never get to your level, but just wanted to see some growth as I think we have a good product. No worries if you can't help, but I thought I'd ask the experts first, and I will get around to commissioning a film sometime soon, maybe Jaws 3D, but please don't let that influence any decision to give me some pointers. Appreciate any advice, tips, or guidance. Cheers, Charlie."
Okay, so Charlie, just off the top, there's the Gene Lyons rule. Gene Lyons says an hour is the sweet spot. It's the normal commute time. Anything longer, you're going to have fewer and fewer. And we notice that when we look at the stats after an hour, sometimes the drop off is pretty severe, and it depends. So we generally try not to go more than an hour. I see your stuff because I'm looking at you now. Usually goes about an hour, 25 minutes, an hour 30. So I have not listened to it, but I'll tell you, because I really want to help out, I'll listen to a couple episodes and give you some advice, but because maybe the hour and a half works for you. But the general rule we went with was audio quality first.
Yeah.
Audio quality, and then also be concise with your thoughts. Don't ramble. Don't have a lot of filler words. Try to do your homework before, so when you come to record, you're prepared and you're not figuring it out on the fly. But the movies you've done look like good ones. You're posting regularly in the schedule so people can find you. So I will listen and come back with some feedback. But it's in the beginning, it's slow. And don't think you can't reach a bigger level. We didn't think it. But when you put out a product, you're genuine, it's easy on the ears, and you find your groove. Every episode you put out is a number. When you find a person, they then consume the 20 episodes. Then they find somebody, and that's the way it goes. And it goes pretty quick.
Charlie, my advice is going to be a little bit different and sort of cynical. You may have missed the window. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because it sounds like your goals are healthy, which is you're not looking to get huge. You're not basing the value of the podcast that you do on like getting millions of listens, right? If you're serving a community and that community likes the podcast that you're putting out and you're getting good feedback from those people, that's all you really need to do. I compare it to like when I used to be in bands when I was younger, right? You play shitty little bars around town, but the following that you have is people that appreciate your pod. or appreciate your band in my metaphor. And that's satisfactory. And the reason why I say that is that we were fortunate enough, Big D and Raj had the vision early on to put this podcast together before all the big guys got into the game. And right now, the unfortunate reality is that all of the little guys who do these independent podcasts like you're doing are going to get crowded out by celebrities. Celebrities and brands are taking over the space. And so it's very hard to get heard now. So we were fortunate that we had a big enough listenership to begin with prior to that happening. But if you look at all the top podcasts right now, and Big D mentioned, keep it concise, keep it short. The reason why someone like a Joe Rogan is top of the charts and can ramble for 3 hours, it's that celebrity status and having other celebrities on. So please keep your healthy view of podcasting and don't think that there's a way to compete with those big guys, because those big guys, again, like all you have to do is have the president on your podcast or a former president on your podcast or any celebrity on a podcast, or just some, have the QAnon shaman on your podcast, and immediately you're going to get more listenership. Just do what you're doing and follow Big D's advice as well. You've got a website that's already a great start and more than a lot of podcasts are doing, and stick with it.
Yeah. And I think the network, to what Gene's saying, the big guys come in with network backing.
Yeah.
So they have people creating, when you're a small independent podcast like this, Gene and I, we've had to run most of it. You do the recording, you do the editing, you do the web work, you do the social media. A lot of these big casts come in and their creators just record, somebody else edits. It's a big machinery. And you think we got lucky. When we started Shat the Movies, it was right as Westworld was starting. Mm-hmm. And TV podcasts weren't really a thing. And I said to Roger, I think Westworld's going to be big. It's a perfect tie-in. So I think our third movie was the 1970 Westworld movie. So we got the bump from Westworld, the TV show, and Shat the Movies was in the top 3 of all Apple iTunes at the time. So that audience bled over into the movies. So if you just stick with what you're doing, I'll listen, give you some audio tips. Grow slow, grow organic, but never compare yourself, like Gene said, to the big guys, because it's not the same playing field.
All right. Well, hope that helped, Charlie. And great question. If there's anything we can do to support too, keep in touch with us. Let us know. We're happy to give you plugs or anything like that. We'll definitely have a listen to the podcast as well. And remember that most independent podcasters are super happy to help each other out. It's a great community. And we've had help from other pods. We've helped other pods, and it's good to keep that going and in service of the listeners. Without further ado, Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week is the film adaptation of Roald Dahl's work telling the story of Matilda, a gifted girl forced to put up with the crude, distant father and mother. Worse, Agatha, the evil principal at Matilda's school, is a terrifying, strict bully. However, when Matilda realizes she has the power of telekinesis, I didn't know she had telekinesis in this film, she begins to defend her friends from Trenchbull's wrath and fights back against the unkind parents. Commissioned by Adam S. This came out in 96. Danny DeVito. You see the poster, you know it. I didn't know there was any telekinesis involved in this. I thought it was just a girl dealing with bullies in school.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't either. Okay.
No.
Good. So we're both going into this.
Yeah.
But hopefully Ash is back for this one. This is you can't
Ash
leave us
is going to be back and on muscle relaxers. So
We'll
stay tuned, listeners. Stay tuned. All right. Well, thank you, Adam, for commissioning our upcoming film. Thank you, Scott H. in Friendswood, Texas, our good friend, for commissioning Perfect. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, Watchmen, and last season of True Detective. You can find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Once upon a time, there was a girl named Matilda.
Hi, Dad.
Get in the car, Melinda.
Matilda.
Whatever.
Who was extraordinary in every way.
Pretty soon you'll be able to do any multiplication, whether it's 2 times 7,
14,
or 13 times 379.
4,927. Wow.
She can multiply large sums in her head. So can a calculator.
But in a world where grown-ups make all the rules.
I'm smart. You're dumb.
I'm big and you're small.
I'm right.
And you're wrong.
In a school where the principal...
In this school, I am God!
...has no principles.
Yes, Miss Trunchbull. Sir. The Trunchbull used to be in the Olympics. Shot put, javelin, hammer throw.
She will discover...
Somebody's got to teach her a lesson.
Deep inside herself...
You should believe in whatever power you think you have inside of you.
A secret weapon...
What's it with my powers?
...to even the odds.
No more Miss Nice Girl.
Hey, dip face, have a carrot.
Nah, you eat it.
Now...
Cookie. You will not leave this platform until you have consumed the entire confection.
She gives power...
You can do it, Brucey!
...to the powerless. Help to the helpless.
Harry, take your hat off.
I can't get it off.
And disaster... ...to those who deserve it. From the author of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and James and the Giant Peach and the unique vision
What did you do to your hair?
of director Danny DeVito comes the story of every kid's right to stand tall, no matter how small. Matilda.